In the quiet whisper of a fading American sunset, where the sky bleeds into gold and the wind carries the soft sigh of passing time, an old man walked slowly along the shoulder of an empty rural highway. His name was Walter Granger, though no one had spoken it aloud in days. His coat was too thin for the cold, his shoes too worn for the miles he had walked, and his hands trembled each time he wiped the loneliness from his tired eyes. His steps were uneven, almost questioning the purpose of each next one, but he kept walking because he had nowhere else to go. The world had become a stranger to him. His wife, Margaret, had passed away 6 months prior. His only son had moved across the country and rarely answered the phone anymore. Walter's house, the home he and Margaret built together, had been claimed by the bank when the medical bills swallowed every last dollar. And so, the old man kept walking along the road, carrying nothing but a canvas bag filled with the last pieces of his life, a faded photograph, a Bible with pages worn thin, and a few sandwiches wrapped with care, though he no longer remembered when. The sun was lowering behind the distant hills as the sound reached him, a low rumble, heavy and deep, like thunder rolling across steel. It grew louder, closer, and then multiplied, one growl turning into many. Walter's steps faltered. He turned around slowly. A line of black motorcycles, headlights blazing like the eyes of wolves, approached in formation, leather vests, heavy boots, chrome glinting, and on their backs the unmistakable emblem, a skull with wings, Hell's Angels. Walter swallowed hard. He had seen them before in movies. He knew the rumors, biker outlaws, dangerous men riding with their own code, the kind of men people crossed the street to avoid. Walter's heart thumped weakly in his chest. He wished Margaret were here to hold his hand. He wished anyone were here to tell him it was going to be all right. The bike slowed, engines growling, lights flickering across the cracked pavement. Walter felt his knees shake as the pack of riders formed a circle around him, engines idling deep like sleeping beasts. The cold wind rushed across his face. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a man stepped forward. He was tall, broad, shouldered, with a beard streaked with silver and tattoos that peeked from under his vest. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. His vest patch read Tank Road Captain. "You all right, old-timer?" Tank said, his voice rough but steady. Walter opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Just a trembling sigh. His throat was dry, his fears louder than his voice. Tank took a step closer, lowering his sunglasses. "You look like you've been walking for years. Where you headed?" Walter swallowed again. I don't know anymore," he whispered. The bikers exchanged glances, the engines humming around them like a living heartbeat. Tank motioned with his hand, and the bikes quieted one by one until the silence settled heavy around them. "You got a place to stay?" Tank asked. Walter shook his head. "Family, anyone coming for you?" The sadness hit him so hard he nearly crumpled. "No," he managed. "No one's coming." The wind carried his voice away, small and fragile. Tank looked at the old man for a long moment. Something softened in his expression, a shift that only a few in the world would recognize. The other bikers didn't move, but their eyes lowered with a kind of shared respect. They had all known emptiness. They had all known loneliness. They had all known what it meant to walk with nothing but your past. Tank stepped forward again. "You hungry?" Walter blinked. Yes, but I don't want to trouble anyone." Tank snorted. "Trouble, old man, feeding somebody ain't trouble." Another biker walked over, a younger one with a scar across his eyebrow and a vest patch reading Mace. He handed Walter a bottle of water and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Walter stared at it. "For me, eat," Mace said. "You look like a stiff breeze could knock you over." The old man took the sandwich with trembling hands. Tears pricked his eyes. It had been days since someone had shown him kindness. Days since someone had looked him in the eye and seen him as a human being instead of a burden. He took a small bite, then another. The bikers waited quietly, watching the man regain a small piece of himself. When he was done, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and whispered, "Thank you." Tank nodded once. Then he asked carefully, "Walter, why are you out here alone?" The old man hesitated. The memories were heavy, but so was the silence. And so, he told them. He told these leather-clad strangers about losing his wife, his home, his son, and his purpose. His voice cracked with every sentence, but he kept speaking because it had been too long since he had spoken at all. When he finished, none of the bikers spoke for several moments. A heavy quiet settled across the road. Then Tank said, "Get on my bike." Walter blinked. "What? You're not walking another mile alone," Tank said firmly. "Not while we're on this road." The others nodded. No debate, no hesitation. It was decided the way only men who lived by their own code could decide. Walter's voice shook. "But where would I go?" Tank placed a gloved hand on his shoulder. "You're coming with us." The words struck Walter with a mixture of fear and warmth. "But I don't belong anywhere." "You do now," Mace said from behind him. One of the older bikers, a man named Red with a long braided beard, chimed in. "World's too damn cold to leave a man out here by himself." And so, with more help than he expected, Walter was gently lifted onto the back of Tank's Harley. The seat was wide, the leather warm. Walter clung lightly to Tank's vest, staring at the emblem embroidered across it. A skull with wings, fierce and bold. And yet, somehow, he didn't feel afraid. For the first time in months, he felt safe. The engines roared to life, vibrating through his bones. Then, in perfect formation, the Hell's Angels rolled forward, carrying the old man with them as the night sky swept across the horizon. They took him to their clubhouse, an old converted warehouse with a fire pit out front, a long wooden table, and a flickering neon sign that hummed in the night. Walter had never seen anything like it. He expected chaos, danger, noise, but instead he saw something else entirely. He saw brotherhood. They gave him food. A warm stew, fresh bread, and hot coffee poured into a metal mug worn smooth by years of use. They gave him a jacket to keep him warm. They let him sit by the fire while Tank and a few others made calls, whispering quietly among themselves. Walter sat there, soaking in the warmth. Hours passed. The night grew deeper, but Walter felt lighter. He listened to the laughter, the banter, the teasing, the clinking of bottles, and the roaring of stories from men who had lived rough lives, but still kept pieces of goodness buried inside. Tank eventually walked over and sat beside him. "Walter," he said gently, "we called your son." Walter froze. "You?" "What?" he answered. Tank said. He sounded shocked. Said he didn't know things were this bad. "He's on his way here right now." Walter felt his breath shake. His hands trembled. I didn't think he cared anymore." Tank gave him a long look. Sometimes people forget what matters until something shakes them awake. Walter nodded, eyes watery. "He's on his way." Walter whispered again, as if repeating it might make it real. "Yeah," Tank said, and he sounded like a man who wants to make things right. Walter looked into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. Then he whispered, "Thank you, all of you. I didn't think kindness like this existed anymore." Red grinned. "Hell, old man, kindness ain't dead, just looks different depending on who's showing it." As they waited, the bikers told Walter stories, wild, unbelievable adventures from long roads and long nights. In return, Walter shared stories of his youth, of Margaret, of the life he once had. He laughed, real laughter, laughter he thought he had forgotten how to make. Hours later, headlights swept across the dirt lot. A car pulled up. A young man stepped out, broad-shouldered, eyes red from crying, hands shaking as he looked around at the intimidating figures before him. But his gaze stopped on Walter, and something inside him broke. "Dad." The word felt like a prayer. Walter stood slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Son." They crossed the distance between them in seconds, embracing with the kind of desperation only lost time can create. The bikers turned away respectfully, giving them privacy. Tank approached the son. "Take good care of him," he said, voice firm. The son nodded. "I will. I promise." Before they left, Walter walked back to the bikers. He shook Tank's hand, then Red's, then Mace's. He thanked each of them with a depth of sincerity that made even the toughest men clear their throats awkwardly. "God bless you," Walter whispered. Tank smirked. "He does, sometimes through us." Walter smiled, a real smile, a hopeful one, As the car drove away, the bikers watched silently, engines cooling in the night air. Tank finally crossed his arms. "Boys, sometimes the world needs reminders." Mace nodded. "Of what?" Tank looked toward the highway where the old man had once stood alone. "That even the roughest roads can lead to something good." And the engines roared back to life as the Hells Angels rode into the night. Not as outlaws, not as myths, but as unlikely guardians of a lonely old man who simply needed someone to care. And as the story fades into the soft glow of dawn, the narrator's voice echoes gently, "Dear viewers, never judge kindness by its cover. Sometimes the people we fear most are the ones carrying the warmest hearts. If you believe in compassion, in second chances, and in stories that remind us to be human, please like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Soul Stories for more heart-touching tales like this."